Are you tired of the usual argument of the existence of God and the non-existence of God? If so, then I recommend that you watch this video in its entirety. But be careful, because if you are an atheist and want to remain one, then you had better abandon this video immediately. And if you believe in some revealed religion but are unwilling to question your view of God, then again you had better abandon this video immediately. Here, in fact, I'm talking about the God who comes before the existence of religions, who comes before even the existence of our earth. I'm basically talking about the God who created, sustains and governs our universe. In order to provide incontrovertible proofs of the existence of this God, here I'll follow a scientific-like approach. What we need to know about science is that it uses models to give explanations of reality and considers these models true as long as they can give satisfactory explanations of that precise reality. Proceeding in a specular way, here I take as a model a mind that imagines and assume that the universe is the result of the imagination of this mind. I then show how this model is able to explain the greatest mysteries of the universe, mystery that science has not yet been able to explain and will never be able to explain. And since in science the proofs in favor of a model consist of its ability to explain reality, will be able to consider the above explanations as incontrovertible proofs of the existence of God, where the term God used here to refer to the mind that, according to this hypothesis, would be imagining the universe. We begin by observing that the hypothesis that God is a mind that is imagining the universe is the only possible explanation for the universe if we are to comply with Occam's razor, whereby Occam's razor we should mean the principle according to which, between alternative explanation, we should always prefer the one based on fewer assumptions. This is because, in order to claim that the universe is being imagined by a mind, we must only assume that there are minds capable of imagining, among which we must count a mind far more powerful than our own. This is something that science will never be able to achieve. Indeed, any other hypothesis of a scientific nature that we were to develop to explain the universe would require us to make additional assumptions. In particular, we should assume that besides our mind and other minds, matter also exists. But this is precisely that additional assumption that Occam's razor forbids us to make. The hypothesis that God is a mind that is imagining the universe allows us to explain what physical laws are, and thus more specifically what allows our universe to manifest a very precise behavior. In fact, as we know from experience, a mind that imagines is able to govern the content of its imagination by following rules that it outlines through its concepts. This is something that science will never be able to achieve. Physical laws are in fact the instrument through which science explains everything, and therefore nothing can explain them in turn. Nor is it possible to explain physical laws by claiming that they are abstractions that we use to describe the innate behavior that matter has. And this is because by claiming that the behavior of matter is innate, we would not be giving them an explanation. By the way, the fact that matter cannot be used to justify the behavior of the universe is also shown by quantum mechanics. In fact, it shows us that if we take two entangled particles going into different directions, the measurement of one immediately affects the behavior of the other, even if the other is infinitely far away. But if a particle acquires a given behavior on the basis of a measurement that occurred infinitely far away from it, then that behavior cannot have been determined by the matter on which it is locally composed. The hypothesis that God is a mind that is imagining the universe allows us to explain what matter is. In fact, as we know from experience, a mind that imagines is able to imagine that fullness which is opposed to a vacuum, and which allows us to say that we are imagining something that occupies space. If therefore we consider matter to be that by which objects occupy space, because they are not just made of vacuum space, then God would be perfectly able to imagine it. This is something that science will never be able to achieve. Particles are in fact a mathematical construct to which science ascribes properties, and to which it associates a matter only by convention, and only to account for the fact that they occupy space and cannot be made of vacuum alone. This fullness of which particles would be made up is therefore a metaphysical notion which comes before physics and is used to do physics, which is therefore assumed and not explained. The hypothesis that God is a mind that is imagining the universe allows us to explain what consciousness is, whereby consciousness we should mean the dimension in which our first-person perceptions are manifested. In fact, as we know from experience, a mind that imagines can imagine other sentient beings with all their perceptions without problems. This is something that science will never be able to achieve. In fact, the most science can do is to say that consciousness emerges from the matter of which the brain is made because of its complexity. The problem is that this, far from being an explanation of consciousness, is only a statement of principle and therefore a true act of faith. In essence, science will never be able to explain consciousness from the physical property of the brain simply because our perceptions are not physical properties but experiences. It also serves little purpose to counter that it is definitely the brain that produces the mind, due to the fact that when the brain stops functioning, the mind stops functioning as well. And this is because the only consequence it is fair to draw from this relation is that the experiences of the mind are in correspondence with the states assumed by the brain. Ultimately, from the perspective of science, the mind and the brain are two entities destined to remain separate, which is not the case in the assumption that the universe was imagined by a mind. In fact, such a mind would have no difficulty imagining both the brain and the mind of every sentient being, making their perceptions always correspond to the states assumed by their brains. The hypothesis that God is a mind that is imagining the universe allows us to explain why the universe is consistent, whereby consistency of the universe we should mean the absence of any contradiction within it, and thus the impossibility of some property being present and absent at the same time. In fact, as we know from experience, a mind that imagines cannot imagine anything concretely that is present and absent at the same time. This is something that science will never be able to achieve. The fact is that contradiction is a limitation only for our mind, because it is our mind that is unable to imagine anything concretely that is present and absent at the same time. Since, however, science studies a universe that is other than us, it will have no reason to limit its dynamic a priori to what are limits only to our minds. In essence, from the perspective of science, the universe might as well have been contradictory, at least for those aspects on which the survival of life forms does not depend. The hypothesis that God is a mind that is imagining the universe allows us to explain why the universe is intelligible, whereby intelligibility of the universe we should mean the ability we humans have to understand its functioning through our concepts. In fact, as we know from experience, a mind that imagines is able to govern the contents of its imagination by following rules that its own concepts outline. And although it is a much more powerful mind than ours that imagines the universe, it will still make use of concepts that from a qualitative point of view we may consider to correspond to our own. It is precisely for this reason that we are able to grasp those concepts, although to do so we need so many passages and to use a language such as mathematics. This is something that science will never be able to achieve. The fact is that intelligibility is a limitation only for our mind, because it is our mind that cannot understand everything. Since, however, science studies a universe that is other than us, it will have no reason to limit its dynamic a priori to what are limits only to our minds. In essence, from the perspective of science, the universe might as well have been unintelligible, at least for those aspects on which the survival of life forms does not depend. As we have just seen, the hypothesis that God is a mind that is imagining the universe allows us to simultaneously explain all the greatest mysteries of the universe. The fact then that science is not and never will be able to explain even one of these mysteries is why the only conclusion we can come to is that God exists. If these arguments have intrigued you and you want to learn more about them, you can simply follow the videos through which I introduce the movement called Scientific Spirituality for Atheists and Agnostics.